A joint investigation by DW and more than 40 media outlets has revealed how Uber aggressively lobbied governments and potentially even skirted some laws as it expanded its ride-sharing service. A trove of leaked documents suggests the ride-sharing firm hid information from investigators in the Netherlands by remotely killing internal devices in its Amsterdam office. Now, the report also details the close relationship between Uber and then French Economy Minister Emmanuel Macron at a time when the company was trying to avoid French regulations. Macron gave the company direct access to his staff. All right, Lisa Lewis is our correspondent in Paris. She joins me for more on this. Lisa, I mean, in some ways, it's not uncommon for European capitals to mix very intensively into their own industries and branches and even pick favorite companies. I mean, Paris, after all, owns part of car maker Renault. So help me understand, what is the scandal here when it comes to Uber?
Well, many people here feel it was not morally acceptable for an economics minister to stand by the side of an international company that they felt was very capitalistic and wanted to take down French labour law. That's indeed what some opposition politicians said today. They said, you know, he really became, Emmanuel Macron, at the time economics minister, as he said, he became the lobbyist for a company that wanted to regulate French labour law. And when you look at it, actually, the situation of French taxis and Uber at the time was, and still is, very different. Taxi drivers, there are about 50,000 licenses in this country, and one license can cost up to hundreds of thousands of euros, whereas to become an Uber driver, regulations are a lot less strict, and they only have to pay a few hundred euros. And obviously, people here were rebelling against that and said French economics minister at the time and now President Emmanuel Macron should have done more to protect French jobs and good jobs here, because taxi drivers have the possibility of becoming employees. Uber drivers are only self-employed.
What have we heard from Macron's camp about what's been reported?
Emmanuel Macron has answered to the reports. He was obviously contacted by those carrying out the investigation. He said it was just normal to help some companies that wanted to disrupt markets, to help them lift barriers so that they can operate freely. Obviously, at the time, he was part of a socialist government, but even socialist former President François Hollande, he had pledged to bring down unemployment. He actually said, you can hold me personally responsible in a political way if unemployment doesn't go down. And that was obviously also what Emmanuel Macron was aiming at when he was cooperating, apparently, or helping Uber to develop the market here in France. He was hoping that thousands of jobs could be created.
Lisa, is the conflict over Uber as explosive there today as it was years ago when this was really a big issue?
I think it kind of has calmed down. People here have eased into the situation. There's still a judicial conflict going on, actually, such as in other countries. A court here has decided in 2020 that Uber needed to give employees that are not legal employees at the moment the status of employees, and that they no longer had to work as independent workers. But that decision still needs to be implemented, and it looks like it's very difficult to get Uber to implement that situation. So the main focus of the conflict today is on how these workers, how the drivers of Uber can work here in France and what conditions they would get as a worker for Uber.
All right, DW correspondent Lisa Lewis in Paris. Thank you very much.
And for more, I'm joined now by our correspondent in Brussels, Christine Mundois. Christine, a high-ranking former EU official is also implicated in these leaks. How embarrassing is this for the European Union?
That's right, Monica. A former official by the name of Neelie Kroes, who was effectively the EU's digital chief at the time, has been implicated in these papers. It's been suggested that during her time in her role and in the months preceding that, that she was helping Uber lobby with senior executives within the European Union, as well as in her home country, the Netherlands. Papers show how she, for example, was in full support of Uber at some point when the company had some issues with the authorities in the city of Brussels, in her home country, that she was personally not just out tweeting in support of Uber, for example, but also maneuvering behind the scenes to get the regulators to, quote, back off. Now, for her part, she denies any wrongdoing, saying that in her position, in her role, it was her job to be talking to politicians about companies like Uber. But if you look at, for example, some exchanges in these very leaks between Uber executives, it appears that they were aware of the sensitivity of this relationship that they had with this commissioner, on a number of occasions instructing colleagues to keep it confidential. So after leaving her post, we must note that she also then went on to take a job on Uber's advisory board, where she was earning something to the tune of $200,000 a year.
Now, briefly, if you would, Christine, now that this has been exposed, what kind of repercussions will there be?
Well, transparency groups in the European Union, these are sort of NGOs, are advocating for greater transparency, especially when it comes to what senior officials do after leaving office. The EU's ethics laws dictate that when somebody leaves a position, especially of that high, a position of the high nature as that they're meant to do what's called an 18-month cooling-off period. In that time, they're not meant to be lobbying, especially on topics that they were previously responsible for. In the case of Neelie Kroes, it does appear that she might have been doing that in that 18-month period. Not only that, she went on to secure a job on Uber's advisory board after that. So what these groups are calling for is greater transparency. They say that the EU has egg on its face because they've been warning the Commission about this, because this is not the first politician to find herself in this position, and they're calling for greater tightening of the rules when it comes to the ethics breaches.
Right. Christine Mundwa there reporting for us from Brussels. Thank you so much.